feature of the meeting, of professional interest area. There are several of these. These are go under the heading of iStart. There are groups that are organized that have a particular area of interest. For example, there's a group that's interested in imaging, so they have one group. There's another group that's interested in technology, applications of technology. They meet together and have session. There's another group interested in computational biology. So there are large number of these groups organized around a common interest, professional interest. And the Alzheimer's Association encourages members to become members of iStart, and they get the benefit of getting reduced rate for participating, plus they get the journal as part of the Journal of the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's and Dementia. So that's another forum. In addition to these other forums, before the meeting, there is large number of special symposia, special meetings of groups that are not connected with the main program of the association, yet they are very much linked. For example, one good example is the Alzheimer's disease neuroimaging, which is a large consortium. They meet for a full day before the meeting. Alzheimer's disease neuroimaging international, which is the international component of that, they have a meeting. So there are a large number of satellite meetings before the meeting. And then in addition to that, in the evenings, there are satellite meetings that are sponsored by various pharmaceutical companies that have special topics, and they would have one or two speakers, and there would be a dinner and discussion group. And there are several of those going on at the same time every evening after the meeting. During the 5 days of the meetings are divided with, in the morning there are 1 or 2 plenary sessions, and I'll give you some examples of them shortly. Following the plenary sessions are given by prominent people in the field, key opinion leaders, and they tend to be overview presentations to give a big picture of a topical area. And then following that, there are scientific sessions where there are shorter presentations, oral presentations. And in addition to all this, the Alzheimer's Association organizes press briefings in order to inform the international media about what are some of the hot topics, hot issues. Again, I will show you some examples of those so that you get a big picture. So that sort of gives you a big picture of the meeting. As I said, there are close to 5,000 people that attend, literally hundreds of thousands of posters and hundreds of presentations going on very wide number of topics. Right now, the main emphasis, scientific emphasis for the association and for the scientific program are several-fold. One-fold is the idea of being able to detect the disease early. We know the disease starts many years before, so early detection is very important for the disease. For that, there's quite a bit of emphasis on biomarkers. So you'll see a lot of presentations on biomarkers. Another important issue for the Alzheimer's Association in the field is the idea of developing therapies, interventions, a wide range of interventions. Some are pharmacological, biological interventions, others are behavioral social. So you'll see a lot of papers talking about the early phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. So there's a large number of those early trials reported, as well as interventions, non-pharmacological interventions, such as exercise, diet, lifestyle, things that might have an effect on behavior. Third area that's very important is epidemiological studies, cross-cultural studies, where we use epidemiology, cross-cultural studies in order to identify early risk factors. So that's another very important topic area. The other issue is being able to redefine the disease. Continuously, there is question about diagnostic criteria, diagnostic ascertainment, linking imaging with other diagnostic algorithms. So that's another issue. Finally, health economics, public policy is a major area of interest. So there are those topics. So now let's go through very quickly and look at some of the plenary topics. I'll give you the names of the presenters and their title, and then we'll go through and show some of the presentations. Hopefully this will work. No, it's not working. Okay. All right. The one presentation was preclinical tau therapeutics. Tau has become a very popular topic now. Amyloid is being replaced by tau, presented by David Holtzman, who's a well-known neurologist. He's chairman of neurology at Washington University. That was an overview presentation of what's happening with tau story. Another plenary presentation was Gabriela Constantini on role of peripheral inflammation on cognitive impairment. Inflammation continues to be an important topic, and it's an important target for therapy development. It's always been around, but I think it's getting resurgence now, growing interest in this area. Another speaker was Laura Baker, talked about exercise and memory decline. This is an example of what I was talking earlier about lifestyle. Exercise could have a beneficial effect along with diet and other lifestyle changes. So there is a tremendous interest in this kind of topics where they may change the course of the disease. Another issue is population epidemiology. Carol Brains is a well-known epidemiologist in the field. She's one of the key opinion leaders. And the relationship between aging population and the increasing prevalence of the disease continues to be important. Now, I realize a lot of you want to have details of these studies. Those can be gotten by getting to the website of the meeting. And in fact, there are some videos that one can get from the Alzheimer's Association. So there is material that you can get you later on after the meeting about the details. So my presentation is just to give you an overview. Here's another talk on the tau propagation by Iketsu, professor of pharmacology at Boston University. Very important topic. Traumatic brain injury and the relationship to dementia is a critical factor. It's becoming quite apparent that head trauma, one way or another, can have become an important risk factor for Alzheimer's. Recently, the journal published a special issue devoted under the title of Military Risk Factors that dealt with this topic in a much greater detail. I think this is an important area for collaborative study, the multinational study in the future, where one may include in the epidemiological studies to see to what extent this relationship between head trauma and increased risk can be teased out, worked out much more detail. Another important topic was the genetics of the disease, and there is a new model being proposed under the heading of the neuronal failure. This is by John Hardy. John Hardy is one of the leaders in the field. He was the person to develop the early genetics of the amyloid, and he was the author of the amyloid hypothesis. So this is a very important presentation by John. Another topic was the relationship between PET imaging and progressive pathologies. This is a new topic by Jenny Driver, the relationship between Alzheimer's and cancer. This is a provocative topic because it's become clear that in both cases, in cancer and in Alzheimer's, oxidative metabolism and changes in mitochondrial dysfunction could play a role. So there's a very promising area of both basic research as well as some epidemiological studies. So those are the major plenary sessions that were present. Now, the other topics, after the plenary sessions, there were topics, and there were several teams. The topics were under the heading of a team. In this case, it's diagnosis and prognosis, and the topic under that were gender and Alzheimer's. The gender issue continues to become an important one. Why there is difference between men and women for the risk difference. Sex-specific drivers, disease risk factors, a critical one. It is another one. So this is again, an emerging area of science that the AAIC sort of set the stage. Hopefully, these presentations would stimulate further research. Another theme was public health and psychosocial one. And then under the topics were computerized cognitive training, what works with whom and how. This is an important issue because it can accelerate, computerized assessment can accelerate the evaluation and will enable us to perhaps use this computerized assessment techniques for evaluating large populations. Because as we move into earlier stages of the disease, we need to move the field outside of the clinic into the community. And in order to be able to do this in a community-wide, you need computerized assessment techniques. So this whole area of computerized cognitive assessment training are important, both from the point of view of evaluating the patients, but also from point of view of stimulating, because we know that stimulating the brain can have beneficial effects. So by computerized games, we could be using some beneficial effects. Again, under the heading of the public health, psychosocial, the question of ethnic, racial, cultural diversity was explored. In brain aging pathology, there are some very significant differences between Caucasians and Africans, and the genetic basis of that is being worked out. People like Alan Roses, that's working at the APOE TOM40, finds very significant differences in the patterns, evolutionary biology of how African Americans evolved versus Caucasians. The same kinds of things perhaps happens with Asian populations. And here is one from Tony Bro from Australia, looking at the Australian Aborigines. This is the kind of thing perhaps can be done in China, looking at within China the different ethnic groups that you might be exploring. this issue further. Here is, again, public health and psychosocial issue, gene expression, pathology, combined the value of the combining biobank with MRI. This is an Italian project. It's a research resource, predictive value of biomarker. This is what I was talking about, developing the technology for being able to detect the disease early. Prevalence of MRI abnormality in Framingham is a long-standing study that has been going on since 1948. There's large database, and now it's being mined to see to what extent some of the MRI data can be used for predictive value of this population. Basic theme, translational science. Here we get into more molecular issue, looking at stem cell models, using stem cells as a basis for studying the genetics of the disease, modeling microglia and stem cells. Again, it's a very promising area of research. Diagnosis and prognosis. Here is a cross-sectional study of biomarkers for the future. Early this morning when we talked about, I urged that we move from cross-sectional data into using the cross-sectional data as a starting point for developing the computational methods so that we can use the information we get biomarkers from this to be able to make predictions on an individual. Because when a person goes to the doctor wants to be able to run a pattern of biomarkers and be able to make predictions. More of the basic science, give you here on the topic of therapeutics, as I indicated, some new strategies are being looked at, targeting chaperone activity for treatment, myelocells. These are all new therapeutic targets above and beyond the amyloid and the tau. This is precisely what we want to encourage because the current efforts for therapy development have not been very productive, so we need to put some new ideas into the pipeline, and this meeting is beginning to do that. Now, next I'm going to read you some of the hot topics that the international press picked up from the meeting. These are the links in blue, and these are the papers. And if you're interested in any of these topics, you can actually click on the link. If you write the link down, this should be made available to you through Sherry, would make available that you can get into actually get the story behind. This is to just give you an idea of what the worldwide press are interested, what kind of topics they're interested, so that you get. Here you see they're interested in the early stage. What I was talking about is the question of early able dismiss. The relationship of using cancer-based treatment to repurpose for Alzheimer's. This is very significant. I'll talk a bit more. Using eye and smell as an early biomarker, as a test for detection of the disease. Again, I mentioned the need for being able to detect the disease very early, and here is a way to go about. A smell test, the same. This is always popular, red wine. What is in the red wine that's protective? Again, it has something to do with diet. This is the result of a tau treatment that did not work. It was a failure. This is one of the studies that failed to produce. The recognition of early onset, again, a smell test tools to detect the disease beforehand. This is the results of the clinical trial. Clinical trials that don't work get as much attention as the ones that work. Unfortunately, we haven't had that many that have worked. Here is one slide that may reduce low back. Alzheimer's is having the game by dementia, says analyst. Here is a gender difference. Why is it that it's harder to diagnose in men than in women? 4 things you need to know about tau therapy. NBC News, it's a major news. CNN story about the smell test. Again, the eye test gets attention. This was very important. The World Health Organization identifying prevention as an important issue. Gender, again, very hot topic. New approach to understand Alzheimer's and how, again, smell test, eye test. This is, again, very important finding about the lifestyle, how having a challenging job can be protective. The same team that we've known a number of years where someone who has higher education or more stimulating life, they tend to get the disease earlier. So this is a continuation of that story. The question about misdiagnosis is an important one to know why. Smell test again. So I think that gives you a picture of the This I will talk a bit more, behavioral changes that can help diagnose the disease early. The same story, Associated Press picked it up. Okay. Here are some of the greater in-depth stories. This was a report, press release on anti-tau drug made by this company, and it phase 3, it failed to demonstrate treatment effect. But in the secondary analysis that was pre-planned, they found in a small subgroup study population there was a statistically significant benefit on cognitive function and outcome. This tends to be the repeat of the story of most of the clinical trials that we've tried during the last 30 years with Alzheimer's. We see this kind of a story with the amyloid story, and it's kind of happening with tau. Earlier this morning, when we talked about the journal and we talked about the need for a new conceptual model, this is precisely why that need is. That the reason why a lot of these trials are not working is that our conceptual models of the disease are wrong. Therefore, we need to be thinking about a different way about the disease. And that unless we correct that, we're going to continue seeing results that are either negative or if they have any, they're going to be on a small subset, and that's not adequate. So the field needs to break away from find a drug that has a big effect size and will have an impact on large numbers of people. And that's a big challenge for the field. And I think China perhaps could make a big contribution to that effort by re-examining systematically the traditional medicine in China and using the knowledge from traditional medicine, combining it with modern clinical trials. Because in order to get those medicines that have worked in traditional medicine to be accepted, they have to be validated by clinical trials, the same way that you do any other trial. So I think that's a very promising area of research that this community can start thinking about and looking for. There are two ways to do it. One, you can do the clinical trial on the way the drug has been used traditionally, or to do more medicinal chemistry and identify the active ingredients in those traditional medicine and develop a drug from that. A good example is huperzine. Huperzine came from Chinese tea, and it was active ingredient was discovered, and traditional chemistry, medicinal chemistry was done, and a new compound was developed. So that's a good model to follow. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but there might be others that might work, particularly in the area of the inflammatory area, or those that are oxidative metabolism protectors, or so there's a very rich possibilities. Here's another very important study from Netherlands, looking at the, this is a nurse study done by a group of nurse-led vascular care intervention. Although it did not show any major effect, but it was very significant in a group, in a dementia subgroup, which had untreated hypertension who were adherent to the intervention. So in the hypertensives, having that interventions was very helpful. So I think this gives us a very good insight. This could be a useful way of perhaps reducing the risk for the disease. These are the details of the smell test, the smell eye test. Again, I can't emphasize the importance of this because of the need for having an inexpensive, easy-to-use test in the office of the primary care physician. Having this kind of information, this is not ready yet, but it can lead to the development of early biomarkers that could be used. Again, this needs to be validated by further studies, but it's a very important beginnings for the field. Again, another very practical information. This study was from South Wales, Australia, where they removed antipsychotic medications for a large number of patients. Antipsychotic medications are a very useful tool in most settings because they address a number of behavioral problems. But in this study, they found that by removing it and having other ways of controlling behavioral problems of psychiatric disorders can have a very beneficial effect. I think, again, very practical information for primary care physicians. This has to do with health policy and economics, research finding, how system changes may lead to potential cost saving, show that treatment changes underscore the disease. There's economic benefit. People will receive current standard care indication. Treated cost, in other words, no matter what you do, treating the patients that have been given some kind of treatment, that reduces the cost of care. So this should be very important for health policy makers and governmental agencies. Okay, this is very important, a mild behavioral impairment. This is a new condition, new status. It could be the beginning of neurodegenerative process in mild cognitive impairment. The test, the checklist was worked out by, remember I talked about having iStart group. One of the iStart groups is organized around neuropsychiatric symptoms, and they developed this checklist, and it's really a checklist that covers 5 domains: apathy, motivation, mood, affect, anxiety, impulse, agitation, reward. And they came out with a new status for patients, which can help, having this checklist would help physicians be able to make the diagnosis more accurately. Another practical study from Wisconsin Alzheimer's Center showed that people that have challenging occupation, these are modifiable risk factors, they may be more resilient to deterioration. So having higher education or brain stimulation one way or another can have a beneficial effect. So that sort of gives you a picture, I think, of the meeting. As I said, you can get the details of the individual ones through Sherry, and we can provide you. But that should give you sort of a big picture of what the meeting was all about, where it's going. I think in the future, I think the meeting probably will have more of these kinds of groundbreaking ideas, and it could be a great forum for young investigators to go and participate. Thank you very much.